former member of DOGE was just attacked in DC, and now you have Donald Trump threatening to take over the entire city. And then, next up in the news, a former DOGE employee was just attacked in DC, and now you have Donald Trump threatening to take over the entire city. And so, we should talk about what happened, how we got here, and whether Trump's actually allowed to do that. Right, so starting with this DOGE worker, his name is Edward Coristine, but he's better known as Big Balls. And despite being just 19 years old, he previously worked as a senior advisor with access to various government agencies, including Homeland Security. He also reportedly played a key role in DOGE's dismantling of USAID, and he's now working for the Social Security Administration. But according to police, early Sunday morning, 10 young people assaulted him as part of an attempted carjacking in an upscale neighborhood less than 2 miles from the White House, with police saying that he was with his significant other, and Coristine telling officers that he pushed his girlfriend into the car for her own safety and then turned to deal with the suspects before being attacked. You had cops patrolling the area eventually showing up and putting a stop to it, and as of recording, police say they've arrested two 15-year-old suspects, a boy and a girl, both of whom have been charged with unarmed carjacking. And as police continued to search, you had Trump deciding to weigh in, or with Trump sharing a photo that appeared to show Coristine sitting in the street, covered in his own blood, writing, "Crime in Washington, D.C. is totally out of control. Local youths and gang members, some only 14, 15, and 16 years old, are randomly attacking, mugging, maiming, and shooting innocent citizens at the same time knowing that they will be almost immediately released." With Trump then going on to say the law in D.C. must be changed to prosecute these minors as adults and lock them up for a long time, starting at age 14. But then with that, as far as Trump's claim about crime being out of control, when you actually look into it, that does not appear to be the case. The city's crime rates, they've actually been falling sharply. In fact, this last January, you had officials announcing that violent crime in the city had reached a 30-year low, with a 26% decline this year compared to 2024. But to be fair, I will say, Trump was somewhat near the truth in suggesting that there is an issue with youth crime in particular. But young people, they now make up a majority of the arrests for robbery and carjacking in the city. And in fact, just a few months ago, you had the mayor announcing the creation of a special police unit specifically dedicated to preventing and responding to juvenile crime, which some argue is a better approach than just throwing 14-year-olds in adult prisons. But either way, you then had Trump issuing this warning, saying, if DC doesn't get its act together and quickly, we will have no choice but to take federal control of the city and run this city how it should be run and put criminals on notice that they're not going to get away with it anymore. But then, despite their falling out, you had Elon Musk sharing a screenshot of Trump's post, agreeing and writing, "It's time to federalize DC." Now, notably, this is far from the first time that Trump or others have suggested this. You had Trump reportedly considering taking control of the city's police force to deal with protests during his first term. Also on the campaign trail, he vowed to take over what he called the horribly run capital of our nation, so there is no longer a nightmare of murder and crime. And since getting back into office, he's already floated this idea of taking over more than once, not counting this week. And one of the big things is while you have people saying, he can't do that, or at least not technically, the situation, it's more complicated. And if you're just talking about impact, we could see a huge impact here, because DC has had a limited degree of self-government since what's called the Home Rule Act of 1973. And that means that Trump technically can't just federalize the government. Congress would need to undo what's already done. And if the Republicans, they tried to do that, Democrats would probably be able to block the legislation. And in fact, back in February, 2 Republicans introduced legislation to repeal home rule entirely, which didn't get anywhere. That said, though, it would be a mistake to say that DC is totally safe from federal interference. In fact, Trump, along with Republicans, they've already gotten involved. Or you had Trump signing an executive order to create a federal DC safe and beautiful task force. And then Congress, they passed bills to undo legislation passed by DC's local government. And then, of course, another possibility is that Republicans, they tack these changes on that they want here onto must-pass legislation. Like in 2023, for example, when you had them trying to sneak in restrictions on everything from traffic to abortion to marijuana in DC. But then also you have to consider the stuff that's outside of Congress. He has the power to call up the DC National Guard and deploy it without local consent. Plus, that Home Rule Act, it actually gives him the power to temporarily take over the district's police department. And he can even order the mayor to provide the federal government with DC police services and, quote, special conditions of an emergency as he may deem necessary and appropriate. And all of that is before we even consider that local officials may just cave to the pressure. And that is something that we've seen them do here and there.